I'm pretty excited to be here. It's not often you get to speak after an astronaut and a CEO, and I think you're all just getting amped up and ready to talk a little bit about costing and how that can help you make better decisions for your IT. So I've had a long journey myself, in IT, in cloud, software, application lifecycle management. I spent time in Australia, Germany, the USA, and UK. And at Appdio, I've really looked in at how the holistic cost can be calculated for all sorts of applications, services, how your business is running, and how we can share this information into the enterprise architecture so that you can make better decisions. You can naturally connect to me, follow me on Slack, meet me on Twitter. I'm not sure if that's how they work, but yeah. Please get your questions to me and I'll happily answer them. We might be short of time today. So one thing is very certain, and that is your business is going to see disruption. It doesn't matter what you've put into your plan, how easily you've made the situation for your organization and built in some flexibility, you're always going to have things that come and mess up your plans. And I think this year I've said 90% of CIOs have seen some form of a major turn that's changed their plans. I think it's actually 100%, or I might round it up anyway for this year. But everyone's going to see these kinds of problems. And it's not just epidemics and pandemics, it's social impacts onto your business. It's wars, it's disruption in general. Mergers and acquisitions. You might have a great plan for how you're going to run your business, and then suddenly the CEO walks in and says, we've gone and bought another company, and we have to fit that into your plan somehow. And it's these disruptions that show which are the strong businesses and which ones are actually weak. It's the strong businesses that work out quickly. How do they prepare? How do they change? What do they need at the end of the disruption period in order to emerge stronger than their peers or their competitors? So if you think about it, if your business cuts back on the wrong things, and we bring the lens of IT finance here to help the enterprise architects understand the full picture, if you cut the wrong things from your business, you will find it hard after you try to grow and reawaken the business. So it will be hard to attract the right talent, those right people to come and join your business. Your budgets will be impacted after the crisis. Your new initiatives won't be able to start. 90% of your projects fail. Well, these are some of those projects because you can't fund them. You can't get your business around those new things you want to do. So things like your growth of the business get impacted, your profit margins disappear, and your business ultimately has less to invest. That is permanent structural damage to your business. So these things slow down those businesses. And Gartner talked about something like 9% of businesses are the strong ones after a crisis. So in a situation like this, where everyone has a similar impact, it's very important to focus on what can your business do. So which are those important applications and services? What kinds of transformations are important right now to make your business better at the end? So before this latest crisis, anyway, there was a survey of business owners, of CIOs, CEOs, and senior leadership. And if you think about the three different roles I want to highlight today, the CEO, CIO, and the CFO of the business, they each have a slightly different view on what they want. So CEOs, we just heard from Andre, he's very keen to push the digital initiatives, the new products, how you want to do business in looking forward. A CIO wants to increase the innovation and how they can deliver that at scale. But the CFO is very concerned on the price, right? He wants to make sure that she may want to make sure that the investments made in the business align to the real strategic initiatives. So what are those top goals? You don't want to spend way too much on something that's not a strategic priority, unless it was really important from a deep down technical issue. But really, you want to align the goals of the business to the way you are spending your money. and making the right kind of bets. So if you look at the outcomes of this survey, this is before people even thought about COVID, but what would they do if there was a downturn? Almost everyone agreed the things that they would have to decrease and do less of, that have less money or ability to deliver back on the investor or owner expectations. No one would want to take on any new risks in the business, so the risk appetite goes right down. Financial investment goes down, so people are cutting costs. They're working out ways of not making those big bets that they might have made otherwise. And hiring and people development. And actually, I think when we look at what happened with the COVID crisis initially, this is what people did. They went and changed and slashed all of those 4 areas. So I think it rings really true, at least in my eyes. If you look at the top 2 things, though, these are things that saw a big increase. So one of these is cost management, which naturally seems to ring true, right? You look through the portfolio, you look for things that you're currently doing, and you wonder, do we really need that? You know, I don't know if everyone's seen The Martian, but a great space movie in my eyes, but it's all about what don't you need in order to launch that rocket higher than you'd launched it before. So it's about cutting things off the ship that it doesn't need for its current mission. The second thing, though, speed of digital business initiatives. And this comes straight back to that CEO priority on making the business do new things, making it do the right things to push forward. And a lot of these digital business initiatives that we've seen lately are things like that big investment in remote working and making your users productive wherever they might be. So out of these kinds of outcomes, I want to bring it back down to what do enterprise architects think about this kind of thing. And I hope I'm right here. I've worked a lot with enterprise architecture in my history, and I hope that I'm not out of place here. But prioritizing the most impactful apps, services, and technology. So finding those things that you want to push and prioritize. Removing and replacing anything that's redundant, so finding those things you don't need to spend money on anymore and find ways to take back those investments. Building integrations that help you increase the output, so that's a bit on the innovation side that will please the CEO. Aligning technology choices to the new way of working, so in the COVID era anyway, understanding which technology helps you perform better in the current environment. And then finally, looking at making sure applications meet the regulatory and operational needs of the company. So it's silly if there's a new technology coming out there that you really love personally, you know, you'd love to use all the time, but it fails to meet some of those things your business needs in order to leverage it. Prioritizing those kinds of investments leads you to problems in the future. So it's both a technical fit, but also the financial fit. What's going to make the CFO happy? What's going to make the CIO happy to have those things in the portfolio? And how do you get to these kind of positions? I mean, most enterprise architecture technologies, and I'm here for one in particular today, most of them don't have that deep understanding of what the financials of the business are. So how do you know what the cost of running one service over another is? Is there a choice you should make? Are there ways to understand that redundancy aspect that we're calling out here? So to get to that position, we've worked closely with LeanIX at Appdio. So just to push a little bit more on what Appdio is about, it's about understanding the technology that you're using and how to manage it as a business. How does the technology you've chosen add value to the business? And so what Appdio brings to this equation is a full understanding of the total cost of ownership of that software, of that hardware, of all of the IT apps and services, and how the business units are consuming them. That's in the ideal world. We build towards that, of course. And LeanIX brings the in-depth application architecture data, things that answer questions like, does this technically fit our requirements? Does this work for our organization? How long will this work for if you look forward into that time machine, right? So once you add these two angles together, you've now got a financial lens and a technology lens looking at how you're using your organizations or how you're making investments in your organization. And the advantages here are in these 3 Ds that we call it. So the detail, so in both sides, it's a high fidelity kind of set of information. You've got the best of finance and you've got the best of IT fit coming together to tell you what you could and should be running in your organization. It's defensible, so if you dig into the costs that are behind these different apps and services, you can truly understand if that's a real cost. And also, there's different kinds of costs, right? Some are addressable, some are not. If you've already spent a lot of money on something, then the future cost is all you can address. You can't address the sunk cost that you've already put into something. So understanding the defensibility of what is the difference of investing in service A or B going forwards could be a better understanding of the cost. And thirdly, the dependability of that data. Data changes very regularly. You know, the new financial costs in the cloud, for instance, change every minute, right? So people start up and stop and halt and, you know, schedule services all around the clock. The cost per instance might change very regularly. The unit costs of your users accessing the applications change because you change the number of users who want to access them. So because all these changes happen with the data, you need to be able to depend on the systems giving you accurate and to-the-minute or to-the-month responses on the data. So bringing these 3 Ds together, we're able to then address many different use cases from different angles. So if you think about the IT finance answers, specializing in the cost and financial risk understanding, and then on the other side, the enterprise architects understand the technical fit and the business capability, you can bring these recommendations together in both of these systems and get a better understanding. And that way, your stakeholders can look at this data and clearly understand where they should be making the investments, which investments they should be favoring, and how they want to go forward with the long-term plans of the business. And as you do this, all sorts of insights then surface so that you can make the better decisions that you would not have made otherwise. So you can get alerted to different situations in your organization. And to do that, you need good data. So last year we had Energy on stage here at this event. They spoke very eloquently. It was Christian Sherman. And I think the 3 points here were very clear. So understand the composition of the services and apps. So you need a lot of data to truly understand what has been purchased by the organization and how does that flow up into that service or that application. It involves, you know, a lot of labor. It involves a lot of compute, databases, and all sorts of things. It involves contracts with external vendors. And by getting a full understanding of that, you get a full understanding of the total cost of ownership. But it also includes understanding who consumes it, so where does it fall in the business, and what is the life cycle plan. If you get those three things together, then you're able to make those kind of decisions. We heard from a further 2 customers this morning, and we're going to hear from Hermes later today about some more understandings of bringing these data sets together. So it's really powerful and it's really happening out there in the world. So an example I thought I'd bring in today was about compliance. And we all know compliance is one of the sexiest and most exciting aspects of enterprise architecture. So, but the reality of this is, if you have a really cool product, you know, Zoom has had some of these problems, that it succeeds very well in some areas, but in other areas it can't be used because it lacks the GDPR issues or it lacks SOC compliance. So by tagging these up in the enterprise architecture tool, we can surface this information as a source for the IT finance staff to make better decisions. So if they're making plans on which, you know, investments to make, which contracts to extend, how many more licenses they want to buy, then understanding the compliance will help bring that information in before it's too late. So a second look at that, you get that information flowing right up into dashboards so that, you know, your CIO will see it in the review meeting and be able to make better decisions, better information, and see instantly which of the different compliance issues apply across the technology portfolio. I also wanted to highlight where the integration we do with LeanIX sits. So if you look at the left, this is a piece of IP that Apptio has brought in. It's called the Atom model. It's really how do we align the spend, that an organization makes from a finance point of view, and then map it up in so that it fits in with the IT towers model, so that you can understand which kinds of things have been bought from a technology point of view, how those then connect to the business. So apps and services, and then consumption by the business units. This helps you facilitate, a full traceability of where your costs are coming from, help you make better plans for the future, and also be able to tell the business how much those services that they're consuming cost, so that they can make better value decisions about how they want to run the business. And it fits naturally in with the architecture stack. So you can see here that the business capabilities, the architecture, and the software technology architecture all fit in and share information across that level. That helps us get a better understanding of a more efficient allocation model, so that you can really get into those costs with even more dependability than you would. But it also helps the enterprise architects, right? Knowing those costs, knowing how your systems are funded and where they connect in, what they rely on, really makes a huge difference when it comes to understanding the cost flow. And just a little in how it works. I won't go too deep into this today, but you can see that we take an awful lot of data. We've talked a lot about data today. So data is exciting because getting data and intelligently mapping it into a structure then lets you make insightful decisions. So we actually help you surface some of those pieces of information. We use machine learning and AI to really help understand where are there certain opportunities. And some of those pieces of data coming back from the enterprise architecture level actually help us find some of the problems. So if you think about it, if we have an application that's end of life in a year or so, but there's a contract with the vendor that's for 3 years, we've got some external vendors who provide support also for 2 years, then we've got a quick understanding that we're paying for things well below their use-by date, and that's a problem. So if we can help intelligently bring those forward so that there's understanding, you go further through this model, you can see we can prioritize future investments, but we can also go and talk to our vendors. So we could have our vendor managers, the business, or the C-suite, then act on these insightful pieces of information and do something about it. So here's a bit of an example. You probably can't read it all from the back, but our insights library contains a lot of useful information about surfacing this kind of problem. And that was just an example. Other things like applications with high unit costs. You have an application that serves 2 users in your organization. It gives them a really useful report, but at the cost of something like $120,000 a month. You've got to think about that as a business decision. Is that report worth $125,000 a month, or is it something that you could do with a couple of analysts actually thinking about it on a monthly basis? So it's those kinds of things that can flow through. There's several other examples, and I'd love to talk with each of you individually further about potential insights, but that's probably something best left on the Slack channel. So just to summarize, Apptio is an ITFM market leader. We bring in this information about the costing, the composition, and understanding about how you can run your technology as a business. And this is something we've worked with thousands of customers with, but predominantly a lot of the really big businesses. So if you think about the Fortune 100, we've got a lot of organizations within that group who use this. Naturally, it's heavy on the data. So the better the data you have, or the more data you have, the more insights we can find within them. So thank you for your time today. I don't want to take any time from our chance to hear from Hermes after this. And Camilla, thank you for having me here today. Dankeschön.
Vielen herzlichen Dank, dass du mit dabei gewesen bist, lieber Greg. Thank you very much, Greg. It was a pleasure to have you with us.